At the end of 1982, Sony launched the CDP-101, their first CD player. It launched worldwide in 1983. Hot on the coattails of that first CD player, Sony launched a new hi-fi system, a component set that was known as the Liberty. At least it was in Japan. I think it went by different names in different countries. But back in its home territory, you could get predefined configurations of the Liberty components. There was the V1, the V2 and the V3, with the V1 being the highest spec. Now, these were very distinctive looking hi-fi components. Appeared between the late 1970s silver-fronted hi-fis, and in between those and the all-black tower systems that came to dominate the majority of the 1980s. And oddly enough, the style of this Liberty system wasn't a good match for Sony's own CD player. But since it was the only CD player you could get from Sony, it was the one that they expected you to match with the Liberty. Whilst it might not have looked very much like the Sony CD player, it did take a lot of inspiration from that in the other components. First off, Sony's CD player had a drawer loading mechanism, something that became commonplace on CD players later, but others had a hinged lid. And as a result, when you saw the Sony CD player, it looked more futuristic, just having something motorized that takes your disc inside the machine and then the music's played out of sight. It just seemed a little bit more advanced compared to the competition. They brought that idea through to the other components in the Liberty Hi-Fi range. So the cassette deck did the same thing with its motorized mechanism where the cassette disappears inside the component, and the same with the record player, which frees you up with its position within your stack of equipment. Normally your record player would have to go on the top so you could open the hinged lid. So if the first feature that the Liberty systems appropriated from the Sony CD player was the drawer loading mechanism, the second one was its digital display. I had a friend and his dad was a chap who travelled the world. He went to Japan and brought back that first CD player in 1982 before it was even available over here. So I got to see a very early one, and the thing that caught my eye on it was the fact it had a digital display. That just seemed really futuristic and interesting to me. It's hard to describe how digital clocks and digital watches and things felt like the future at the time, but they really did. Even though you'd been able to get digital watches since the 1970s, just seeing a digital clock in, say, a car as a standard fit device seemed quite impressive back then. And seeing it on the front of this CD player, the fact you put your silver disc in this thing, you went inside it, and the counter on the front told you what track you were on and how long had elapsed on that particular track. That was the thing that made me think that this was the future. The Liberty systems took that concept, moved it onto their other components. So, of course, you've got the digital radio tuner. I'm not saying any of these things didn't exist in other components before. I've got digital tuners from the 1970s. But to put all these things together into one hi-fi, it really was Sony's vision of the future of hi-fi in 1983. So yeah, digital tuner, a digital clock. The tape counter was digital, but also it was a real-time counter showing the elapsed time in minutes and seconds. And the record player had one as well. The stock record player didn't. That was the PS-FL99. But if you paid for a higher grade of record player, the Sony PS-FL99, that showed the track number and the elapsed time for that track. And that's something I have not seen on any other record player. Well, perhaps with the exception of that ELP laser turntable, but that's a heavily compromised and very expensive component. As far as a regular stylus-based record player goes, have you ever seen another one with an elapsed time counter for the current track? I've seen them with digital displays for the track number, sometimes for the speed, 33 or 45, but not a counter, a timer. So that's the thing that I've picked up for this video. I've been looking for one for years. So it's the Sony PS-FL99. To my knowledge, the only turntable, with the exception of that laser thing, with a track number and time for each track showing on the front of it. So let's get on and have a look at the box that arrived from Japan and see what state this one turned up in. I bought this one via eBay, and the Japanese seller did a pretty decent packing job. As a result, it arrived in good condition. It's always a gamble with these old brittle plastics now. One good knock is all it really takes to turn something like this into e-waste, so I'm glad it only suffered from a tiny crack on one of the bottom rear corners. Now, being from Japan, it runs off 100 volts, but it's multi-hertz, so it just requires a simple step-down power transformer. The phono cables are permanently attached to the device, but there are two other sockets. There's one for the system bus connectors for the other components in the range, and another 3.5mm socket which activates sync recording on a compatible tape recorder. There was a sticker on the bottom that I translated just to be on the safe side, and it's a note for anyone servicing the machine. Also hidden on the bottom is a sensitivity control for the automatic track sensing feature, and the manual suggests leaving this in the medium position unless you've got any issues. One thing not on the bottom though were any transport screws. It's not surprising, very few people hold on to these, but without them in place, the turntable platter had shifted out of place in transit and appeared to be blocking the motorised drawer. There was only one way to find out for sure though, and that was to plug it in and press eject and hope that doing this won't damage the mechanism. Now, it did take a little bit of jiggling things around, but I finally managed to get the drawer open enough to be able to remove that platter and mat, and then the motorised drawer still seemed to be operating properly. So I put everything back in with plans to next try playing a record. However, I put a delay on that after seeing the state of the stylus. It seems to be pointing straight down, which doesn't look like any stylus I've ever encountered. So I removed it, and sure enough, you can see that it's bent as well as twisted out of position. So there's going to be no records being played on this one today. I would have swapped it out eventually anyway, but it would be nice just to try it with this one first. I then realised that I'd initially put the mat on the wrong way up. It was how it arrived, but flipping it over meant that that no longer shifted about on the platter. Now, I took a picture of the cartridge because I couldn't quite make out the model number with my eyes. It turns out it's XL250G. I initially mistook that for an XL2500. So I went online with that information, ordered a new stylus and unplugged the record player with plans to return to this a week later after I'd been on holiday. Okay, well, my replacement stylus has turned up. It's only a cheap one for the moment. I might replace it with a more expensive elliptical stylus if this thing warrants it, but it's in a lot better shape than the one that came in it. I suspect that when this thing was shipped, this stylus looked normal, but due to the turntable moving around inside because it hasn't been locked down, it's bashed into it and bent it out of shape. So there's definitely no chance of me playing any records with that thing. But now we've got this one, we can give it a go. So let's pop this on and see if this thing produces any sound. But in addition to that, can it recognise the record? It's got a sensor in here that detects where the different tracks are, and that could go wrong. There's plenty of things that could go wrong in an old turntable like this. They're not something that you generally recommend someone buy because there's just so much technology in these that the chance of them working perfectly is pretty slim at this point. But let's find out. Maybe we've got lucky. So first thing, I'll turn it on, I'll open the door, and we'll swap that stylus out. Now, I've been reading up on the instructions, and on the side here, there's a hole which goes through to there, and you put a screwdriver in there if you want to remove the whole cartridge. But as it is, we're going to leave the cartridge in place. A little bit tricky this, we could do with it coming out a little bit further, but still, I'm sure we can get it on if we try hard enough. Now, of course, we want to know that this thing has audio coming out of it, so to do that we're going to be plugging it into a speaker, and I'm going to use this one. This is a Kanto SID, a discontinued product now, but the reason I'm using this one is it has a phono level input on the back, a built-in phono preamp, as well as the usual line level, Bluetooth, all the rest of it. And the reason I'm using that is because this has a phono output on it. You can always tell that it's not a line level one if it has a little ground connector on there. Of course, you can always check the instructions if they're available as well, but that's a bit of a giveaway sign. Okay, so I'm going to start with Retro Grooves because it won't hit a content match. You can see we've got 5 tracks on here, so that's what it should identify once this drawer goes into the machine. So let's just pop that on there and close it and see what that display shows. Not a lot. Let's try that again. 1. Okay. Right, well, the track identification bit is not working, but we'll have a look at that in a moment. Let's just see if we can actually play a record on this one. So start. Well, I can see the record spinning, the arms coming in. Hopefully we've got some audio. It says it's at 33. Yeah, we're definitely on the RCA input. Not a lot's happening. Let's put the arm up and back down again. I can hear a hum, but that's about all. I'm wondering if that stylus is actually coming down on the record. Hopefully I've installed it right. Let's try that again. Oh, it's so hard to tell. No, I can't see that through there. It's just too difficult. I'm looking down on it and I need to look across really. Oh, another quick idea. Let's just check this thing can move up and down. I think I should put a different record in while I'm messing around with this one. Yeah, this is just some throwaway record I bought in a bundle of about 20 for £10, so it doesn't matter if this doesn't work. Okay, now I have turned off the power before I'm removing this cover. Probably not necessary for this part, but just in case I accidentally touch anything that's live, so we'll just get these out of the way. I'm sure it's supposed to come off quite easily to enable you to have a good look inside, perhaps clean the mechanism as well. That side doesn't want to come loose, does it? There we go. Right, I plugged it back in. Let's switch it on and press play. There we go. Oh, it's showing us error on the front. Is there a switch in here? Okay, now the problem might be that I switched it off completely with the record inside, and the reason that would be a problem is because the way this detects the tracks on a record is that it looks for the reflective parts between each track, the shiny bit, the lead-in, and it does that with this sensor at the back here. So when the record is inserted, effectively that's going across the surface of the record and counting where the tracks are and whereabouts they are presumably as well. And of course I hadn't done that because I'd switched it off and switched it back on again, so it would reset everything. So let's just close that. Now the fact it's got this sensor on the back is very clever, because a lot of these turntables, when they do this track identification, they move the arm across the record first and then you can use it after that. Now notice it said there was 4 tracks there and then it ejected it on us. I don't know what that's about. Let's try that again. That's very odd, isn't it? Maybe it's because I haven't pressed anything. Right, so we got up to 4. Is there 4 on there? No, there's more than 4. Well, okay, let's start it off and see what happens. Oh, I think we've got some kind of logic issues here, haven't we? Let's press start from here and see what happens. This thing might be completely knackered, you know. It's a direct drive turntable, so we've got no belts to worry about there. We might have belts on the arm though as well. And now it's just really refusing to do anything. Just going to try it with the cover on to see if it really doesn't like the cover being removed. Oh, it seems if the cover's on there, it's happy to play it. Now I say play it, not a lot's happening again, like before. So maybe we can take this off now whilst it's working and have a bit of a nosy inside. Yeah, it's definitely coming into contact with the record. I'll just move the arm along a bit. Oh, it's too close to the record, that. It's dragging along it. That's not good. I think I've got this cartridge on wrong. I think that's me. What a twit. Let's try that again. Even though it went on there nicely, I don't think it should be there. I think it should be up here somewhere. No, I don't want to go there though, does it? I presume it's the right one. Now, I did buy 2 of these from 2 different places. I'm just wondering if they've sent me the right one. Perhaps it just doesn't fit quite right. Let's try the other one. Okay, a bit of a shot in the dark this, but we'll give it a go. Yeah, no, it definitely fits in the right place. I wonder how it knows that there's no lid on the top. I'm trying to figure that out. There's obviously some sensor. It must just be the light, perhaps. There's no switches or anything that pushes up against that lid. Okay, well, doesn't matter. We'll just put this on for the moment. Ah, we have audio. Okay, now since it seems to be working, let's sort this track business out, because it's supposed to be identifying these tracks. Now, don't worry about me touching the record. Some people will be losing their minds over this, but look, it's a Ronco record that cost me about 5 pence or something. If you really are that concerned, go and buy yourself one from Discogs. But mine, I'm going to touch it all over. Look at this. Whoa, God, some people are now have fainted. For the rest of you though, look, we've got 9 tracks on here. So where are those? Because looking at this, I can see track 1, track 2, track 3, track 4, track 5, track 6. This is probably not the best record to play. I bet there's a bit of a, like a mega mix in here somewhere. Let's try a different one. I'm going to be more careful with the next one though. Back to Anders' record. How many tracks are on here? Oh no, this is a bit odd as well because it's not entirely obvious. Let's just pop it on here so we can get a good focus on it. Right, yeah, those aren't that identifiable, are they? There's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Yeah, I can see it says 5 on the label as well. So it's actually matching up to the label. Let's see what the turntable thinks of it. So let's just close it up and see what it counts up to on the front. 1 that time. Okay, let's try it again. Give it another chance. 1. I mean, the reality is that this thing can play this record now, even though it can't identify how many tracks are on it. If I was just to press start, the stylus will go on at the beginning, it'll just play like a normal record player. And any second now, the audio should be coming through the speaker. Fingers crossed. There we go. But that sounds just fine. And of course you can do the usual stuff, lift the arm up, move your stylus across, hence why there's a window on the top, because you can see where your stylus is in relation to the record. And then we can drop that down. There we go. I'm going to give it another go with a record with a bigger lead into each track, because I think this is foxing it. Right, I think this one might work. So you can see there, it's much clearer where the tracks start and end. We've got a total of, I think it's 6, is it on there? Anyway, we'll find out. Let's close it. Look at the counter on the front. Oh, there we go. It's up to 5. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. It gave it a good go. Oh, look, what's at track number 4? Let's try that one. So 4. Oops, I've done 44. That means I've played it twice. You see, you can select the order in which you want to play the tracks, like so. But let's just clear that. If we had a clear button, there we are. 4, that's what I wanted. Start. So we should get to Cuba Bion now, if it's identified the first 4 tracks right. I think it might be the final one that it's missing out on. We'll find out. Well, it got the general direction of it. And it's showing you that it's playing track 4 at the moment. I think we need to get to that sensor and give it a good clean, because it is seeing the record. It's just doing it with eyes that are slightly worse than mine at the moment. Okay, so the sensor located under this cover seems to be screwed in with just this one Phillips screw in the middle. I don't want to remove this, it seems to be well attached, so let's just see if we can take it off and flip it over without doing that. Because what we want to do is really see what kind of sensor it is, and I've got a stylus brush here which I can use on it. Maybe I should just try brushing it without taking it out of here, because it just doesn't seem to want to come. Yeah, you can see there now, those 2 slits on the device. One of those will be sending out some light and the other one will be receiving it, bouncing back off the record. And of course every time it's received, that indicates that there's a gap between 2 tracks. I've had to take the cover off in the end because there's a little piece of metal that's slid underneath here that seems to be part of the thing to hold this in place that's got out of position, so I'm going to have to pull this off after all. Yeah, this thing. Gotta watch I don't drop that inside. Tell you what, I think we'll just take this whole thing off from the back. That makes sense. Yeah, if we remove these 2 screws, then hopefully I'll be able to figure out what's gone wrong. Right, so what was this doing? Clearly it was underneath here for a purpose, presumably. It kind of goes into the back there. Ooh, got that back on. Right, well, we've got it over. Let's just make sure we've properly got inside that sensor. Let's pop that back on there again. So this thing is adjustable slightly. You can see we've got slots on here, so if it isn't getting the position quite right, you can move it. But also there's another adjustment device on the turntable. If your stylus is coming down too soon or too late on a track, I'll show you that in a minute, but we need to first off make sure it's identifying the tracks before we can start fine-tuning it. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Yeah, quite identifiable. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Yeah. Wow, first time. Okay, so now we could go to, was it track 4 was Cuba Bion, and see how it drops down on that, if it's too late or too early. Right, so definitely too late there. So let's open that up. And we've got this little screw hole here. And you can see it says DP adjust, which is the drop point. I'm trying to see what kind of screw we've got in here. Now originally it came with a little tool to adjust that, and I don't think it's a Phillips screwdriver. It's kind of like a little square tool, I think. So perhaps we can get it with a regular flat screwdriver if we just get the right size. I've tried every single tool that I own that will fit down there, whether it's a flathead, a hex, a Phillips screwdriver, Allen key, and nothing is located at all. I think the best thing to do is to flip it over and see if there's any access panels on the bottom. Yeah, you might be able to make out here we've got some screws with arrows pointing at them, which indicates those are the ones to be removed if we want to take this cover off. So I think we should do that first and see exactly what's going on underneath here. Let's have a look. Right, now the grease in here still seems very good. People going about the grease on these hardening up. Well, there's no issue with that here. Everything that's greased still feels greasy rather than gluey. Notice here we've got a little belt. That'll be for the arm, but I don't want to touch it with my greasy fingers. That one seems just fine at the moment. The trouble is I just can't get to the little adjustment thing here, which is underneath there, but the pot will be facing in the other direction. Yeah, so there's arrows on this piece of plastic as well, so we'll take those screws out. Well, that's awkward, isn't it? That bar's in the way. So you can't get it out behind or in front. Oh, maybe you could do it. No. No, right, okay. Right. It's kind of underneath, there we go. The pot is going to be on here, isn't it? And I can't see it from this side, but I could perhaps flip this over. Yeah, so my plan with this is if I can get to that pot, I can see what kind of connector should be going through to it. Right, fingers crossed I'm not breaking anything here, but let's just see if we can get underneath this. Yeah, everything was just missing it because it's too square. So if you can get the screwdriver through the top, it just spins around like that. I ended up getting one of these instead, a set of trimming tools to adjust various different pots. I did have some of these already, but none of the ones I have fitted. So these, well, there's one that does do the job. Only just though, only just fits. It's a little bit too thin at the top. I'd imagine the original Sony one would have a thicker tip on there, but still, it will locate. It will go inside here, and as you rotate it, you can hear it click into the various different positions, of which on here it says there are 16. It goes up to 15, but there's a 0 on there. So there's quite a bit of adjustment in that, so we can play around with it now. We just need to put this thing back together and flip it the other way up. While I've got it this way up though, you can see back here, this mechanism, that's the thing that will drive the door out. And that was a little bit noisy, so I'm just going to check that over and re-grease everything. And I'll probably grease these rails on the side as well, just to make sure I've got the thing as smooth as I possibly can, although that wasn't the issue. It was more to do with the stylus going down in the wrong position. We'll see if we can fix that. I was just about to put this piece back on again, and I noticed there's this cutout in it, which intrigued me. And notice there's kind of scrape marks either side of there as well. So that's part of the mechanism as this thing moves in and out. So if that goes on there, that means there's something on the base that it locates in. And sure enough, here we go. I need to make sure this thing has been cleaned off and re-greased. I think that's possibly where the noise was coming from. It does look a little bit dried up and crispy, that. So I'm going to clean all that off and put some new grease on there. Now it seems unconnected, but the draw loading mechanism is integral to the track identification function. You see there's a rail runs in here that's on the base of the unit. That locates in this toothed wheel here, and this is driven by this motor with this worm gear. But that also drives this little thing here, this little propeller at the end. So if I just turn this with my finger, you can see the worm gear turning on the right, and that turns the bigger wheel. But the thing that I've got here is a sensor, or at least a gate for a sensor. We've got a transmitter and a receiver. This goes in between them. So you can see as I rotate this, there are gaps on this wheel, and of course those will be generating pulses. So as you load in your record, this moves inwards, this is spinning around. Those pulses, let's just say for argument's sake, as the record comes in, it generates 1,000 pulses. Well, all the time it's going in, we've got a sensor here that's trying to identify where the tracks are by looking for the shiny bit in between the tracks. So as it comes in, it goes, oh, there's one. That was at pulse 280. Oh, there's another one. That was at pulse 310, so that's track 2. Oh, that was pulse 400. That was track 3, etc. So it's got a database then of where the tracks are in relation to where the record is. And then over on this side, we've got a similar thing. We've got another wheel here that does the same thing. Don't know if I can get that up to the camera, but you can see there. Same idea. But this one is connected to the mechanism that moves the arm. So it wants to go to track 3. It knows where that is in relation to the pulses. It moves it to a certain point until this registers that number of pulses, and then it puts the arm down. Yeah, so I really wouldn't expect a little loading motor like this to be responsible for the track identification function, but without that it wouldn't work. But without any of this it wouldn't work. I mean, everything's interconnected and also rather delicate. I mean, we've got a very fine string here that's pulling that arm across. We've got a little rubber belt here that's on this motor to start the arm mechanism working. I mean, there's loads of little plasticky bits everywhere. I mean, it's a very clever machine, but it's also relying on some very delicate parts to carry on performing their function. And whilst the case and all the rest of it is quite solidly made, it's only going to be as reliable as its weakest component. However, it's still working at the moment, but I think that's a bit of a minor miracle. Yeah, well, it's counted up all the tracks on the front. I'll select track number 4. Yeah, that's working now. And yeah, that stylus is coming in from the right. I think it's supposed to be that slow. I was a bit concerned before that it was slow, but I don't think it's supposed to be a speedy operation, this one. Right, so now you heard that it came in before after the song had started there. So let's open that up. Right, I've done 4 clicks to the left. I honestly don't know if this is making any difference at all, but we'll keep going. I'm going to do another 4 clicks. We just need it to hit where there's silence rather than music. Yeah, I think it's starting at exactly the same position every time. I don't think this is making much difference at all. It is definitely moving the pot. At a certain point, you're just going to end up turning that thing all the way back round to where you started, and it'll end up going in further into the track. So let's have a listen. Yeah, I think I've done that now. So one more click. Right, now that's as close as I can get. I've tried every single one of the positions on that dial, and that is as near to the beginning of the record that I can get with this setting. So I just want to try one more thing. I'm going to try adjusting that centre on the back again, just to see if that makes any difference at all. That is getting its information from this when it first goes in. So if I was to move this further into the record, it would then say that the track was at a different position. I think it would be inwards, I'd have to go. So it was already all the way in. So if I slide it all the way in the other direction, we'll see what difference that makes. Right, moment of truth. Nothing. No difference. Okay, well I'm going to leave it there because I've spent perhaps 4 or 5 hours on this now, adjusting various different things without much success. The only one that really had any bearing on the drop position of the stylus was the drop point adjustment. All the other mechanical things that I've been playing around with haven't really changed anything. We've got it now though, so it will drop down about 2 seconds into the track. That's as close as I can get it to the lead-in. You'll hear there that we're at the beginning of this track because I've just started the record, but if we skip, this is when it's going to use its own ability to determine where the drop point is, and it's about 2 seconds into that track, as it will be on all of them. As it is, we've got everything working, maybe not perfectly, but it's working fine, so I can do a bit of a demo on it later just to show you what the different features are on here. But the first thing I want to do, or the last thing I suppose, as far as this section goes, is to clean this lid, see if I can get it a little bit more transparent than it is at the moment. It's really rather misty looking. Okay, well I tried wiping it with a cloth. It has done absolutely nothing. There's no dirt coming off this at all because the problem is that it's scratched. If I get it into the light at the right angle, you'll be able to see that quite clearly here. And it looks from the marks as though somebody's took a circular polishing tool to this and done more harm than good. Of course, you don't need to have this part on display. This could be in a stack of equipment and you never even see this section here. But the fact they've put this transparent part on it with a bit of a scale at the top to enable you to put the stylus down manually in the right position if you really wanted to, makes me feel like I should try and at least get this a bit clearer. All I'm doing is using a bit of brass metal polish for, well, brass, copper, stainless steel, chrome, and the plastic lid off a Sony PS-FL99. I think it's got that on the back of there somewhere. Right, well that's about as good as I can get it at the moment. It's not perfect, but it's a lot better than it was before. I don't want to spend any more time on this because I want to get back to the mechanism, because I've been reading the service manual and I think I might have another way to alter that drop point. So let's have a go with that. Okay, so in the user manual, the only method mentioned of adjusting the dropping point is this control here. Now we've already played around with that and I've managed to get the arm to drop as early as I can. However, it's still a few seconds into the track, so we need to move it further still towards the outer edge of the record before it pops it down on the track. Now, the reason this is here is because somebody might want to change the cartridge. And say they were to change it for a heavier one than the stock cartridge that's on here, that might drop down on the record quicker than the one that's here. And therefore, you can adjust it slightly with this, a little bit in either direction, so it makes sure it goes down in the right place. So this is a very fine adjustment really, and not big enough for what we need. Another thing we can do, under this cover here on the arm, there's a option to adjust the muting. There's a pot in there, and the muting occurs when the arm goes down on the record. So it'll move to a track, and as it hits the record, it cuts out that crack, that pop, that loud noise perhaps that might go through your amplifier, but then it brings up the audio a fraction of a second later, where you can adjust the timing on that in case, for example, again, it was just a little bit out. But that's more of a control that should be set in the right place to start with. Similar to the one I'm going to adjust here. At the back, you won't be able to see it, but there is a screw right down in the bottom there, and apparently you can turn that clockwise, I think, to move the arm a little bit that way, and anti-clockwise to move it that way. I think that's how it works. We'll give it a go. I mean, if this doesn't work, I'm just going to live with it as it is. But since I have got one more thing that I can try, I might as well give it a try. Okay, so this is the screw that I'm going to be adjusting, and you might be able to make out it's got a little bit of locking glue on the right there to hold it in place, and it did mention in the instructions that once you get it into the right position you're supposed to lock it in place, so definitely the right one. Let's give it a go. So I just need to adjust this, I think, by spinning it clockwise. I'm going to do it a few rotations. Apparently you can't unscrew it, it just screws continually. So the thing at the bottom is moving. Can you see that behind it? Just that there. Yeah, that's definitely moving. Oh, now it's gone left. So it only moves a little bit. Might be enough though. I'm going to get it at its far right position, which I think is about there. Okay, let's try that. Right, I'm going to put a light on here now. It makes sense that the adjustment is only very tiny, because the difference between success and failure at hitting that leading is minuscule. That is the end of the previous track. Okay, now I could go back to that control at the back and adjust it further, and it's quite likely I will have to do that. But first, I just want to try this one at the front, because with this, I can adjust it in detents, in clicks. So I know one click to the right from this should be all the way back to the beginning and have the stylus as far left as it can go in this current setting. So if I do that, I think now we might be perhaps in the right place. Let's find out. Right, so we're somewhere between those two, aren't we? Let's adjust it again and do, say, 6. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Okay, well, we'll see where that's ended up. With this, we've got the ability to adjust it much finer than if I was twiddling that screw at the back. So fingers crossed, we've got it in the right place. And we have! Brilliant! It's hitting the right spot. Okay, let's skip to the next track. It should be right all the way along now, so hopefully this is going to hit the bit... Ah, what is that? Was that the start? Let's lift that up and go a little bit to the right. We might need to just do one more click or something. Yeah, I think we were like a fraction of a second out there. I think we need to go just one more click perhaps. Yes. Okay. Well, they are so close together. I don't think I'm going to get it any better than that. Let's go to track 6, the last track on this side, and see if that lands in the right place. Yep, that's hitting it right as well. And just to make sure it doesn't slip out of position again, I'm going to pop a little bit of nail polish on top of there. I think that should do it. Okay, now I'm going to use this record to demonstrate the features. You can see on side A here we've got 5 tracks. So if I just pop the record in and close the door, have a look at the front here, you'll see it counts up to 5. But now you can see the display is reset to show zeros. If we press the skip key here, you can see on the right hand side that's the track number, and it of course loops round to the beginning. So if we were to say press track 4 and start, once the stylus reaches that position, the time starts counting up. Now, because it's the moment the stylus hits the record that this starts counting, this will show a couple of seconds or more longer than the actual track length because it's counting the run-in. But as you can hear, it's hitting the exact right spot on the record now. And if we want to skip to the next track, just press skip and it moves the stylus along and of course resets the time, and then there we're on the next track. Then it's working exactly as it should. Okay, so that's the basic operation. Of course, once it gets to the end of the record, the arm moves back to the beginning and it stops playing. Or we can repeat the record by pressing this one here, and that will repeat the current program. At the moment, the current program is just to play the whole record. Even though I started at track 4, it'll go back to the beginning again. So if I'm to skip now, it's going to skip all the way back to the start of the record and start back there. It's going to track 1. Now, I want to show you something else here that's quite useful if you want to manually place down the stylus. I will say though that if you want a manual record player, then you'd be better off buying a manual record player. This is really designed to be used in a fully automated way. But we're on track 1 now. So if I just lift the arm up and I want to move it, say, to track 2, you can see I'm moving it across here, but you can't really see it very well. But you can tell when I've got there because the track number changes. So if I drop it down now, I'm on track 2. But let's just stop there, because the next thing you can do with this is program in the track order. So, for example, if we want to play track 5, then 1, then 3, then 2, then 4, we can do that. But we've got more space here. We've got a total of 8 selections we can make. So we can always play track 3 again, and then track 2 if we were to want that selection. So then we press start, and I shouldn't have picked track 5 first because it's taking the arm all the way to the end before it goes back to the beginning again. But now if I press repeat now, this is going to repeat this whole program. and if I was just to pick one track, it would have played that one over and over again. Now, another thing that this does is automatically detect the size of the record. Now, it's doing that, of course, with the same sensor that it's using to detect where the individual tracks are, because it's looking for the little shiny bit between each track, and of course there's a shiny bit at the start of a record. So if we just open this up now and I was to drop a 7-inch on here, it will detect that. Now, I don't know if it's going to do a 10-inch. I can't find one. I do have one somewhere, but I can't find it at the moment. I doubt it. I think it's going to detect between 12 and 7. But if we start now, you want it to be able to detect the record, because you don't need to put the stylus down for a 12-inch on the mat when you put a 7-inch on there. So it's working its way across now, and it's going to track one on this 7-inch record, which would hit a content match, so I'll have to stop it playing very quickly. Doesn't sound too great anyway. This is from my pile of scratch knackered records that I can use to demonstrate things with. So the thing you'll notice though is that it's playing at 33. If we just change that to 45, we have to do that manually. I would have thought it would automatically pick 45 for a 7-inch, but it isn't malfunctioning. That is how it's supposed to operate. It just puts it down in the right place. It's down to you to pick the speed, but it always defaults to 33 1/3. So I think that's pretty much everything I can show you on that. The only other thing that I thought about was the fact that one button is missing on here. Can you think which one it is? It mentions it here, random music sensor. Yeah, we don't have a shuffle button or a random button. And I was trying to figure out when those were introduced, because this is a device from 1983-84. I don't know if it was going to be a little bit tricky to implement a random feature on this at that time. Randomness is not very easy. However, it's probably possible, but maybe there just wasn't the desire to have shuffle play back in the early 80s. It was something that was introduced towards the latter part of the 80s on CD players, but I don't think you can find a record player with a shuffle play button. Correct me if I'm wrong. But there you go, that's the general feature set of this thing, and it's working exactly as it should do. Right, I brought it over to the hi-fi because I wanted to plug it into this separate preamp and then into the amplifier, which enables me to plug my wow and flutter meter into the headphone output so I could test the speed, irregularity and the wow and flutter. Who knows what it's going to be like after all these years. It doesn't really tell us anything about what the product was like when it was new, but it'd just be interesting, I thought, to find out. But it got me thinking when I put it on top of my normal record player here. One thing that always seems to crop up in the comments whenever I've shown a turntable like this, I mean, there's been plenty over the years. There's the Sharp, which was able to play both sides of the record without having to flip the record over yourself. There was the Sharp Boombox, and there was plenty of Technics models, 3 of those, I think, at least. And they all share one thing in common. They've got a linear tracking mechanism. And that's the thing that always seems to kick off in the comments, because whenever you show a turntable with a linear tracking mechanism, you get this row developing about people saying linear tracking's better, and other people say no, linear tracking's worse, and blah, blah, blah. It just always ends up in this pro and con linear tracking argument. And surprisingly, this will come as a shock to you, it's completely missing the point, because the linear tracking mechanism in things like this and the other models I've shown isn't there to produce better quality sound. It's there to make the device possible. You see, you couldn't do a normal pivoting arm mechanism with a direct track access feature in a device this compact, or as compact as any of the other ones I've shown over the years. You can get direct track access on a pivoting arm, the ADC AccuTrack 4000 is it? Anyway, that one is an example, but it's a big old machine. If you want something that can slot into a stack of hi-fi components or sit neatly on the top, I mean, the Technics models are always saying that they were the same size as an album cover. Well, you certainly wouldn't call this that. So yeah, the linear tracking mechanisms in these, it's not there for the sound quality, it's there to make the device possible. So whether there's pros and cons to it are irrelevant, because the device can't exist without a linear tracking mechanism. So it's just part and parcel, they come together. Anyway, now we've got it set up here. Let's try this wow and flutter meter out and just see what results we get. Okay, so we've got the record playing. Let's just have a look here. We'll start off on the left. We've got the drift or the speed irregularity. I've got this scale set to 1%, so 1% fast at the top, 1% slow at the bottom. It's looking at around about 0.4% slow, I think. I mean, I'm sure there's a pot somewhere I could twiddle if I wanted to adjust that, but that isn't bad at all. I don't think I'll be able to hear that. Moving on to the right, though, the flutter. Well, that's very good. I've got this one set to 0.3 on the scale, so we're looking at the bottom row. So 0.3 will be there, 0.2, so it's just under 0.1% wow and flutter. So it's keeping a pretty regular speed, and it's only ever so slightly slow. So I think for a 40-odd-year-old device, it's not doing bad at all. Now, I know I'll get asked about the sound quality if I don't talk about it, but in my opinion, you shouldn't really be asking someone else to tell you about the quality of a sound. You should be listening to it for yourself. It might be a controversial opinion nowadays when people just want to be told what to think, but I really do think that you need to hear things for yourself because you might like something that someone else doesn't and vice versa. But if we just go down the route of what I like at the moment and whether it sounds all right to me, well, the answer is yes, it sounds just fine, and I like the sound quality from it. The one thing that is very impressive is the lack of background rumble. Sometimes with a direct drive turntable, you can hear a bit of a rumble, and there's none of that at all on this one, and that's usually caused by the motor sort of vibrating a little bit in a direct drive one. And if you were to have a belt drive turntable, you're separating that motor out from the platter and it can isolate those vibrations. Well, you don't need to bother with this one. It isn't an issue at all. Right, so first off, no rumble, very quiet. When it's moving the stylus across a bit of the record with no music on it, you just can't hear anything at all. If I play a record with dust on it, I'll hear crackles and pops, but that's all. As far as the quality of the sound, well, I think it might be a little bit brighter perhaps than my other turntable. It's very hard for me to do an A-B comparison because I can't switch them both into the same preamp at the same time and move between them very quickly. I'd have to unplug and plug everything back in. 5 minutes later, I've forgotten what something sounds like. But I think my record player, my main one, is quite a nice warm sound. This one sounds a little bit perhaps crisper, but not unpleasant. And it's the kind of thing that if I didn't like, I'd just adjust the treble on the amplifier. But I've also got to say, on top of that, it might not be the fault of the record player if there is any issue, because I'm plugging it into my preamp with the settings that were for the other turntable. I haven't changed all those because I don't want to change them all back again. And also, oh, that's a very cheap stylus. You could go a lot more expensive. You can swap the cartridge out as well. If this was my only record player, the only one I had, I would be completely happy with it at the moment, but I might tinker with it a bit to see if I could improve the sound. But if I couldn't, I'd be happy with this anyway. So yeah, there you go. As far as I'm concerned, it sounds fine. Now, is that the answer to the question? If it isn't, it's the only one that I've got. So there you go, that was the PS-FL99, Sony's attempt to drag the good old record player into the modern digital age so that it better fit in with the other components in their Liberty hi-fi systems. And I think they did a pretty good job. Much better than this attempt to modernise something that's getting on in years. So I think we'll go back to the normal old man look. And I just want to say that because of the amount of time that I spent with the PS-FL99, getting it to work properly, because I really wanted it to work after all this time I've been looking for one, I managed to find one. I wanted it to function as it should, and I'm very happy I managed to get it to do that. Because of all that time I've spent with it, I've grown very attached to this one, much more than if I'd have just got something out of the box and it had worked perfectly. I think there's a lot to be said for getting something working yourself. You feel like you've achieved something, but you've also got a connection with that device. With all that said, I still wouldn't recommend this particular turntable. After playing around with it, I realised that there are a lot of potential failure points on these and some very finicky little components that won't have enhanced with age. So I would suggest if you do want something with a similar functionality with direct track access, look at the Technics models that I've featured previously. Yes, they're getting on in years as well. They're perhaps a little bit newer though than the Sony. They seem a little bit more robust due to the fact they're not draw loading mechanisms for one thing. Because they're a little bit later on, I think they might have even gone into the 1990s. They just seem to have got things a little bit more sorted. But just in closing, can you think of any other record players that had a digital elapsed time counter on the front other than the laser one There might be some out there that I just can't think of. So if you know of any, put some information in the comments. I'll also put some links in the description to the other videos I've done about the Technics turntables. I say they're quite rare and not too easy to get hold of, but a lot easier than this old Sony, which took me years to find. So I hope you've enjoyed having a look at this in the video today. I know it's gone on quite a bit, but the whole process took me quite a bit as well. So anyway, that's it for the moment. As always, thanks for watching.